Hey peeps, Small Traveler here, and in this video, I'd like to talk about matchups. I'm doing something different. I'm gonna be kind of improvising, essentially. You know, in training mode, I'm not gonna be doing a script. If you like this, tell me. If you don't like this, tell me. So, to begin off, you need to know, how do you win or lose? Like, what is the main thing you want to know if you win or lose? Like, the main thing. Because everything will build off of the win and lose conditions. Everything built off of this. Like, Falco, like, for example, Falco wants to be in your bubble, but he doesn't want you to be just outside of his bubble. Like, he can't effectively deal with this range very well, but he can very much deal with this range, but he doesn't have any way to really force this range onto you. So he wants to get you to close in on him. He wants to get you to close in on him. And then, then what are your win and lose conditions here? Well, they're generally the inverse of the opponent's win and lose conditions. But then, you could add a bit of extra, like, DK could possibly lose because, like, he's shielding, or because he does a stupid jump in, or because he grabs too much. Those sort of things. And then you want to know the key moves of the opponent. Like, what are your opponent's main neutral tools? How does your opponent control neutral, and, like, what do you need to, like, look out for? Like, whether it be, like, a poke, like this, or, or just, like, or something that they can use to whiff punish you, like this, or like this, The various neutral tools and how they're used in neutral. And then, what are your opponent's main combo starters? This generally has a lot of overlap, especially in some characters, with their neutral tools. Like this is a big combo starter, but it's also a very large part of neutral. This is also a pretty big part of neutral, and it's a combo starter. This isn't a super big part of neutral, because it's not super useful in neutral, but it's a very good combo starter, and it leads to stuff. So then, what are your opponent's main kill moves? Like, how do they kill you? This could be through, like, whether it's a direct kill move or if it's something that's a combo. Falco can just do up tilt back air at higher percents, or, he can do, like, down air back air, at higher percents. And then, then there's also the state in which, Falco, like, your opponent could hit you and kill you very easily. Like, Falco will kill DK very easily in an edge guard. Finally, you want to know, is there anything that your opponent has to surprise you? This could be like cheese, this could be just a weird move that you gotta respect out of nowhere, like, anything like that. And then there's space. Like, how does your opponent control space? Like, how do they keep you out of their bubble, and or how do they keep you in their bubble? Like, like laser. And then, how does your opponent use that space? Like, if they have a ton of space, how are they going to use it? Are they going to retreat? Are they going to possibly try to close in more? Maybe they'll just stand their ground and just be like, I have this space, this is my space, So, like, you want to know what your opponent would prefer. Like, Falco would rather either retreat or stand his ground than approach you directly because of his good defensive options, So then, what kind of space is important in the matchup? Is the horizontal space? Like, is it like whoever's above the other? That's more important than being in the corner, and like in this matchup, or would you much rather be above your opponent than in the corner? That sort of thing. Like, what kind of space? Not just the amount of space, but like the verticality of it. The extra dimensions. Like, what dimension? And speaking of space, you want to know the ranges. Like, what are the important ranges? The most important being the one that your opponent wants to be at. Like, close range versus for Falco. And then, how do they get to that range? How does Falco get to this range where he can just use all of his baby mix-ups? Well, really, his main way is to somehow get from the mid-range and either hopefully approach without getting punished, or to get you to approach somehow. Maybe, you know, he retreats, and, you know, he then expects you to chase after him, so then that gives him an opening to sort of, you know, keep you in the close range. You know, that sort of thing. Then there's, you know, unfavorable ranges. You know, like this range isn't super good, and then this range is terrible for Falco. How does your opponent change with the range? Like, you know, Falco, for example, wants to do this at long range. He wants to kind of pray at this range, and then he, you know, this range, you know? And then what range do you want to be at, you know? It's basically the same questions for, you know, your opponent, but for you, you know, like that. And then, you know, there's the pacing of the game. Like, what pacing does your opponent's character want to be at? Like, do they want to be slow? Do they want to be, like, aggressive? Do they want to match your pace, like, relatively? You know, and then there's different kinds of, like, these different paces. Like, you know, sometimes you want to kind of just chill, but other times you actively want to get away. You know, like, what does your opponent want to do here? You know, like, how does that character do? And then, how does your opponent's character maintain this pace? Like, you know, like, how do they stay comfortable? Like, Falco will laser you to stay comfortable and chill out. And then how can you break the pace? Like, is there any effective way of just getting in even when your opponent is peppering you with laser, or maybe getting in on you constantly and you want to kind of, you know, zone out, get him away? Like, you know, like DK can just walk here. Like, you know, it's like whatever. He's lasering me. It's free space. That sort of thing. But then, you know, if your opponent is forced into an uncomfortable pace like this, what are they able to do then? Well, I mean, if Falco is forced to be fast, like, you know, here, he does have a couple of options, like this, you know, and like this, and like grab, you know. But, you know, but those are very risky. Or he can, you know, go away. He can just disengage entirely. You know, just, but this could also be very risky, because he's then putting himself in a bad situation, all that sort of thing. A character has a preferred pace and range for a reason, you know. So then, let's talk about their disadvantage. Like, if they had a choice of where they wanted to be in disadvantage, where would they want to be? Would they want to maybe be above you? Would they rather be at the ledge? Like, that's the most basic dichotomy there. Like, would they rather be at the ledge or above you? You know. So how could Falco maybe, you know, get to the ledge, or, you know, if he wants to get above DK, like, how does he do that? Well, he has side B. Side B is pretty nice, you know. And speaking of side B, like, if your opponent has any unique options, you gotta keep that in mind as well. Like, you know, like, and then how do you punish these options? You know, like side B, this is a pretty decent option, but it's very easy to whiff punish. Like, you can, like, you know, you can't jump at all. Like, yeah, like, that's a very easy dash attack for DK, or like a punch, or like whatever he wants, if he's not trying to, you know, go like, does your opponent have any good reversals, especially off stage? Well, Falco does have some pretty decent reversals if he has his double jump with things like down air. But overall, it's not that important, though he can side B and just randomly spike you if you aren't careful. You know, that sort of thing. And then in what way would you want to push advantage, you know? Do you want to maintain a more low-risk, low-reward advantage against someone? Would you rather, you know, like, kind of like juggling low, like with sharp, fastful up airs for DK, because these cover a bunch of options and are low risk? Or would you rather juggle high, you know? Like, DK would do this versus, say, Rob or Snake, because, you know, because they have a lot less options when you do this, because bad aerials, because, like, slow aerials and stuff like that. Like, and then, you know, things like being here, like, would you rather hang here, or would you rather, like, go, or would you rather, like, stay on ledge? That sort of thing, you know? And, you know, at the ledge, it's sort of the same thing, you know, like, slow, bad, you know, whatever. Then there's their advantage. like, where does Falco want DK, for example? Like, mostly, and offstage. Offstage especially. Offstage especially. Like, where can this character really just kill you, and how can you avoid that? How can they punish you for trying to get away from offstage? Like, how can... Falco can punish DK pretty hard for trying to get out of offstage as quickly as possible, or avoid getting offstage. You know, with things like, you know, like, because, you know, double jump. You know, that's a pretty easy thing to do, to deal with. How does your opponent want to push advantage, and then how could you counter that? Like, Falco just kind of wants to go at DK, but you could kind of just do that at, you know, whatever. But it's a lot less effective than versus, you know, like other characters. Then how do you reset neutral? Like, you know, especially in the most common situations, like above them, or like off stage, or at the ledge. Like, the goal when you're in disadvantage is to reset neutral. How do you do that? Now, that can be more universal, but there are matchup specifics that could affect that, like, you know, make some options more effective, others less so, you know. And then the last thing you want to know is, what stage do you want to take your opponent to? How does your opponent interact with platforms? Like, you know, do they extend combos off of it better? Does it intrude on their juggles? Like, you know, like Battlefield will intrude on DK's juggles, but it will enhance Falco's combo game. You know, in conclusion, like, you'd want to ban triplats versus Falco as DK. And then what kind of platform formation would your opponent want? Like, if they, you know, especially if they benefit from platforms, like, you know, again, like, would they rather like a triplat, or would they rather like a dual plat? Would they rather, you know, maybe Smashville's platform, or maybe they just want no platforms at all? Then how does your opponent handle large and small spaces? Like, you know, are they good in small spaces? As in, like, do they thrive in situations where, you know, being able to get in on your opponent is very easy, like on Smashville? Or, you know, maybe they'd rather be on, you know, Pokemon Stadium 2, where they have enough space to kind of just zone out and play defensive. And then how does your opponent interact with what is normally your best and worst stage? This is important because you don't want to autopilot and just go, oh, PS2, I guess, you know. Because, like, you know, like, if you're DK, like, because, like, Falco really likes PS2, because it's big, and it allows him to camp, and it allows him to combo, and extend combos and stuff, you know, like, but then, you know, like, DK's, yeah, another one of DK's best stages, FD, you know, and as well as Kalos, Falco struggles on those stages. He might actually ban those stages. So, then using all that, you want to know what 2 stages you really want to ban. Like, you want to ban maybe a third one, depending on playstyle of the opponent, you know, because the playstyle of your opponent could affect what stage you would want to pick, because, you know, like, you wouldn't treat every person that plays a character the exact same way, so why extend that to stages? And then, you know, you want to pick at least a good top 3 stages for if they ban 2 stages, you at least have a third stage that you can go back to. And, you know, and depending on your rule set, like, some rule sets have like 3 bans, so then you'd want a top 4. And then, you know, some stages are a bit controversial, like Lilat. You know, if your region doesn't have Lilat and you'd rather go Lilat, then, you know, like, what are your good alternatives? You know, that you want to plan for what stages to pick, depending on things like the rule set as well. Well, that's all from me. This was long. I don't know if this was even entertaining, really. But it might have been, but it might be better in normal videos. I don't know. Well, this has been Matchups by Small Child Lord. Please subscribe for more Smash-related content. I'd much prefer if you liked and stuff, because I've been doing kind of terrible recently in terms of numbers. Yay!